Hello everyone, and welcome to this version 2 update to the Simple Transitions framework. So what we're going to do is show you the new features, and the first of which is rotations. So rotations are very easy to set up, and they just tick a checkbox like you would with the other transitions, and then you set a start point. In this case, we're going to be 270, which is completely out of the camera's view, as you can see. And then we're going to go to 0, fully in view, as you can see there. And what we've done here is we set up an important example. When you set a rotation, it doesn't understand which way you want to rotate. So for example, it doesn't know if you need to rotate from 270 down to 0 or from 270 up to 360. So I'll show an example. And see, in this case it's gone from 270 down to 0 and done 1.5 flips anti-clockwise. What we really wanted was half a flip clockwise. So if you find situations like this occurring, just click reverse rotation and it should fix your problems. And there we go, flip clockwise. Now just give it a play between setting these, and if you really have issues, you can do things like set 359 or 1 as your animation ending point, and it'll help clear things up as well. But usually this is more than enough. Okay, the second feature we have is an update to the movement scripts that we have. So before, if you used to do a movement transition, your object would move in the scene regardless of any hierarchy. It would just move straight to position and completely ignore what its parent is doing. Most of the time this is actually alright, and you could hack around by moving, say, the start and end points of a transition onto the parent you want to follow with, and it would do the same thing, but we thought it was a bit messy. So to fix that, we've introduced movement types. So for example, the movement type we want in the case to follow a parent is actually local. Difference would work as well, but I'll explain that in a minute. So for example, in this case, let's go back to Absolute actually and show you this little animation. So what we have here is two objects moving into position. Now if I was to make this a child of the other object, you'd expect a bit of a change, but the way we work right now, no change whatsoever because we're set to absolute. It will move always to this position regardless of what the parent does. So let's show an example. Let's move the parent over more. The parent's moved over, but the child stayed exactly where it was. Sometimes this is quite useful. But if you don't want this, instead you can change the child to have a local rotation. So what this means is it will affect the local position instead of a global position, which is actually the values right up here. So I'll show you a new example. I'm going to move this child over back to where I want it to be. Let's see, let's have it about there. Yep. Copy current as usual, and move these back. Okay, and let's give that a watch. So it looks like basically the same animation. But the difference now is if we edit the parent animation, we'll pull it back a bit and have a look here. Pull it back a little bit more because it's quite nice here. And watch it now. Then the child animates to be relative to its parent. Let's do it one more time so you can see what's going on. Move it to the middle this time. And again, the child stays where it should be in relation to the parent. Okay, so that's one thing. Realised working with this as well that we're starting to build up a lot of animations, and instead of manually going through each one, we thought it was better to have groups of animations instead. So what a group will do is it'll just trigger, if everything needs to start moving at the same time, it can just tell them all to move or move back or whatever needs to be done. So let's show an example. Let's actually turn these two off from triggering instantly, and instead we're going to have a group trigger them. Let's do that. We add transition group, tell it to trigger instantly, and then what we need to do now is drag in any transitions that will be affected. So first one and the second one, and if we watch what happens, oh, this has turned itself off. Maybe I missed it. Yeah, I missed it. There we go. Okay, so let me just check that again. Yep, okay. So they're triggering instantly and they're moving and doing their thing. And you can also use this to tell all the animations to run so you can actually see what they're all doing as well. With this, we've actually got some useful features. What we have here is transition time and scale. So what this does is allows you to edit a transition time of all the objects at the same time. So for example, right now it's set to 0, which means don't edit the animations whatsoever, leave them as they are, which is important because in this case this has an animation of 1.25 and this has an animation of 1. But if we change this and say we want them to take 2 seconds, then at runtime it'll overwrite all the values and they'll both have a 2-second animation time, saves you manually editing them, and the original values are still stored before you hit play. The other feature we have is scaling. So what this does is it let you edit the speed of the animation for all animations that are being played without setting them to hard values. So for example, they don't all have to be 1. So in this case, if I double the animation, it's now taking twice as long, but we've preserved the fact that this animation takes a bit longer. So it's now 2 times the original in 2.5 seconds, and this is 2 seconds. And the same goes for the delay, and if you also don't have them staying there indefinitely, you can also edit the display time as well. The final feature we've added, it's not actually a feature, but it's a recommendation. We were looking at our animations and we decided they were too unnatural, they were too rigid. So see if they just kind of move in and jump into place. Let me actually put this back down to 1, so it's a little bit more obvious. It's just a bit harsh, it's just like jump, jump. So we're looking into log graphs and frameworks, and we found what we really liked, and what we realised that it would be a little bit unfair to actually implement what they have, because we would just end up copying it completely because we liked it so much. So instead we're just going to recommend it to you guys, and it's called Easer, and it's only €5 here, so that's why we're happy to recommend it, because it is pretty cheap. And what it does is it helps you add natural log graphs or sine graphs and lets you edit them, so you can actually have your animations look a lot more natural, a lot more fluid. And I'll show you what it can do, and it's really easy to implement with the system. I'm going to show you an example here. To implement it, all you do is you just uncomment these 2 lines first in transitional object, wrong way around, so it says I own Easer, and this other one here that also says that you own Easer. So our keyboard's changed, there we go. Okay, if you don't own Easer when you do this, you will just get errors in your code. Okay, and when you do that, you should notice, here we go, an extra drop-down menu here. Now what this drop-down menu does is it just lets you select an ease, and I'll show you what that means. So if we go to Tools, Easer, and open Ease Editor, then we can see that we have lots of graphs and functions here, and it's different ways of animating. So I'll show you what they do. So an insign, for example, will slowly transition into your animation and then go back to a rigid linear animation towards the end, which is the standard for all animations. So you'll actually notice no difference because it'll start slowly, which is off screen, and it'll still end rigidly. But if we want to fix this, then we can change our animation to be outsign for this particular case. And what outsign is that your animation will start rigidly and then it will slowly ease off towards the end and slow down. So this is what's breaking into the animation. And you can see the difference here when you watch your animation. It just looks so much smoother. Let me actually move this endpoint so it's a little bit easier to see what I'm talking about. So actually have a nice animation to work with. So we see here we're just slowly slotting into place. If I go back to insign, you can see the difference. If I just jump partially into place. So this is what it would look like beforehand without any additional eases in. And we think this is awesome. So we do recommend you guys pick this up because it's very helpful. And if you change one of these eases quite easily with a graph, I'll show you how to do that in a second as well, then it affects all your animations, and it means that you can affect the entire one, all of them at once, without having to sit and manually go through each one. I'll show you another example of some things it can do to give you just more dynamic animations without having to play and create very complicated scenes. So for example, we have a rotation here, and I've got one I made earlier called swinging, and I'll show you what it does. Actually, you know what, I'm just going to recreate this from scratch. So let's delete this. So we'll remove this, and we'll add it again, and we'll call it swing this time. And what happens if you want to edit? Just double click, by the way, there's tons of tutorials on the Easier forums and website. And what I'm going to do is make this animation. So what I want to happen is I want it to swing. So instead of just twisting into place, I want it to just swing a little as it does so. So to do that, I'm going to tell it to go above the 1% value. If I just pull this over, and I'm going to add a new point about here. It's about 3/4 of the way through the animation. This, by the way, is percentage based, so it's not 1 second, it's just however far across the animation you are, which works perfectly with our system. So I'm going to curve this up a little bit more actually. There we go, so first swing's a little bit more pronounced. So it's going to swing up and then back and into our animation. Okay, so let's watch and look what that looks like. Automatically updated, and we're now going to swing. And as you can see, it just slowly flicks. Let me turn off the other one so it's more obvious. Okay, I see what's happening. What will happen if you tell it to trigger instantly and your object is disabled, it will automatically enable your object to enable the animation. And this is also true if you call just any trigger instantly or triggers. Okay, so let's watch it again. So there we go, we can just see the nice little flick and the subtle animation there. Whereas normally to do this you would have had to have either graphs and curves on a custom animator, or you would have had to have multiple objects and have them all linking into each other. So this way you can have a nice complicated animation but with a very, very simple interface. Okay, so that's it for our 2.0 features. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video.